My name is Susan Turley. I am an Arizona native, went to the University of Arizona, graduated in '83 with a degree in journalism, worked for newspapers in the Phoenix area for about 4 years, then joined the Air Force as a Minuteman II nuclear ICBM intercontinental ballistic missile crew member. Did that for 4 years and got lucky, and the Air Force sent me to law school. Went to law school at the University of Texas in Austin. After that, I had a bunch of various Air Force JAG assignments. I was a prosecuting attorney. I was a defense attorney for 2.5 years. Managed some legal offices, eventually got an advanced legal degree in government contracting. Did that both on active duty and then after I retired as a civilian attorney, most recently at Fort Huachuca here in Southern Arizona. And then in 2016, I joined Raytheon, now known, used to be Raytheon Missile Systems. It's now Raytheon Missiles and Defense. I'm not actually in an attorney's position right now, but I work in our procurement, our supply chain, contracts and supply chain. So I use my background a lot, and I do live still in south of Tucson. I can see the mountains in Mexico from my house. I have 3 children, 2 of whom are U of A alumni, and I am hoping my 6th grandbaby is due next week. So that's the most exciting thing in my life right now. So that's me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Perry Klauber. I grew up in Phoenix, went to U of A for finance, and I graduated in 2010. After graduating in 2010, it was kind of just after and in the midst of the financial crisis. I did work in finance for a little bit, moved to San Francisco and did some investment banking at a boutique investment bank there called Rutberg and Company, and did it for a little while and decided that I wanted to go to law school. And so I moved back to Phoenix, and I worked at PayPal for a little while in their finance department while I was awaiting my law school applications to come back in, and ended up going to Arizona State Law School. And while I was there, one of my old coworkers from PayPal in the finance department told me that his company is called Cole Real Estate Investments at the time, and it's one of the largest, if not the largest, real estate investment trusts in the Phoenix area. He told me they had a legal intern program, and I ended up working there as a legal intern for a couple years while I was in law school. Graduated from law school in 2015, and from there I got a job at a big firm in Phoenix called Gallagher and Kennedy. There I was doing commercial real estate transactional work, much like what I was doing when I was an intern at Cole Real Estate Investments, and practiced in Arizona for a few years until a big firm in Dallas with a specialty in commercial real estate transactions hired me and brought me now to Dallas to work for them. And I worked there for a little while, a few years, and then I decided to go in-house. And so now my client is a single company called Sonder Inc. They're going public, I think within a month or so, being listed on the NASDAQ. They're kind of like Airbnb, but for multifamily and hotel properties. It's an exciting time to be at the company. They have a lot going on. We're really busy, but it's been great. And I'm still doing commercial real estate transactions, and then a little bit of pre-litigation type work as well.
I thought I was going to be the only public lawyer on the panel, and so it's really surprising that I have a similar experience as far as getting into the legal business. as Susan does. And I'll tell you about that. But I want to first start by saying that the 13th of October is our daughter's birthday. And it reminded me that when my wife had our son, I missed the only class I did in law school. And she didn't miss any classes, even though she was biking around quite pregnant. And so, but I grew up in Phoenix. That my family moved there from the Pittsburgh area. After high school, I went to West Point. My first assignment from there was to Korea. I came back from Korea and was accepted to then the excess leave program. The Army didn't pay for me to go to law school, but I was able to use GI Bill entitlements, went to the University of Arizona, graduated in 1972. I clerked for a federal judge in Phoenix, Judge Carl Mickey, for a year. And then I went and had some more legal training as far as the Army JAG was concerned in Charlottesville, Virginia. And then we spent 4 years in Germany, where I was a prosecutor. I was the OIC of 2 small offices. I opened a legal office in the Wiesbaden Air Base. It was when they were called Brigade 76 moved to Germany. And so I was the OIC. In that time frame, I tried about 100, or I was the prosecutor responsible for about 150 cases. And then the last year that we spent in Germany at that time, I was a judge and had another about 140 cases that I was responsible for. I returned to the Pentagon and was in the General Counsel's office for a while, the Administrative Law Division for a while, the Government Appellate Division for a while. Went to Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, and then from there back to Germany, where I was the assignment officer for people in Germany as far as attorneys coming in. There were about 300 attorneys over there, and I was the kind of person that was the overseas point of contact for all of them. So I got to know Germany fairly well. Then I became staff judge advocate of the 1st Armored Division, which was the senior officer, and had about 7 offices that I was responsible for. That was probably my most enjoyable experience in the military. Great assignments all the way along the line. Leaving Germany, I came back to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where I went to the Army War College. Went back to Washington, D.C., where I was a staff judge advocate of the Military District of Washington. And my last assignment in the military was as in the Office of Legal Policy, Department of Defense Office of Legal Policy and Personnel Matters. So from that, I had come to visit our son, who was in law school, was in undergraduate school in Arizona. I was 46 at the time, and I learned that there were some positions opening in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so I applied and I got the job. I had decided that if I was going to get out of the service, I wanted to do that before I was 50. And so I was in a really good assignments in the service, but decided to make that break. We came back here and I spent 10 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office, 3 as a prosecutor and 7 doing defense work in that office. And then in 2000, I was appointed to the bench and was there until 2014 when I turned 70 and we had to retire. Since then, I've been doing some mediation and arbitration, but pretty much in a retirement state right now. And it's harder to retire than what I thought.
And I knew when you said that Ted was going to go ahead of me, I was in big trouble, because that's a hard act to follow with the background of Ted. And Ted and I actually graduated from law school at the same time. And I've always been just in awe of what he's been able to accomplish in his military and business career. I graduated from undergrad at U of A in 69 and then law school in 72. I immediately went into private practice and have been in private practice ever since. So I've had about 48, 49 years in private practice. I was very fortunate to find a specialty that I was able to situate myself immediately with, and that was bankruptcy law. And the kind of work I do, it's what they call Chapter 11 bankruptcy law. And it's where I represent entities that need to have protection by the bankruptcy courts. I represent companies such as as variable as restaurants, apartment complexes, buildings, real estate developments, and a lot of what I would refer to just as high-end individuals that have a lot of assets, but for whatever reason they have financial issues, such as possibly medical doctors that have a large malpractice lawsuit that's been entered against them, and their medical insurance does not cover them for the size of it, and they're going after the personal assets, or professional athletes. And so I've been unbelievably fortunate to, in 48 years of practice, enjoy totally what I do. It's never dull. It's always exciting. Every case is dramatically different. But again, to summarize, I've been blessed in finding something that I love to do for the last 48 years. And it's been a perfect blend of courtroom trials and business law.
I'm not probably the best to deal with virtual kinds of things, but I will say that I think that the law practice is changing that way a little bit. One of the arbitration cases that I had dealt with one party that wanted to have a person deposed in person, even though COVID was going on, and another side wanted to have it done virtually through Zoom. That became an issue to get sorted out. And, you know, there's some rules of law that I applied and made a decision on what I thought was the best thing to do, which pretty much got resolved after that for that. But what I'm learning and hearing from is that there may be a new way to take depositions, because in the sense that you're not in person. I think lawyers, I think Don would agree that when you're in court, you know, it's a huge thing to observe a person, the language, the tone, the body language and things like that are very important. And in Zoom, you kind of get worried about whether or not someone's being coached and not seen. And so the whole area of AI, artificial intelligence, and that area, I think is really growing. And I think that almost for you all, we didn't have computers until I'd been practicing for 20 years, and now you all have it, and you are so familiar with it that that's just the way of life and the way it's going to be. And I do know that there's a lot. My son is an economist. He does a lot of expert witness testimony work on various kinds of things, but largely in damages in the media industry and other things. And so all you got to do is look at anything that's on the media right now, and there's all sorts of controversy on First Amendment and different kind of violations of the law, of people not being truthful, and so I think it's a huge area, and Fort Huachuca is a place where that whole area is huge on intelligence kind of things and communications. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in that area for people of your generation.
Again, as I mentioned, I'm not in an attorney's position right now with Raytheon, but I have been working full-time from home since COVID hit, and the vast majority of our people are working full-time from home. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. I also, and what was not one of my most successful legal ventures, but I did it anyway because it was for my son. I represented my son in a hearing before an administrative law judge having to do with his with a licensing issue, and that was all done by Zoom. And I think that Ted is exactly right. There's the literature out there is really interesting as to the right to confront witnesses, to one of the crucial things when you're in a trial is how credible do you think the witness is? And sometimes it's difficult to judge that via Zoom, but it's the same kind of thing. We're doing all our hiring interviewing now via Zoom. And it's the same kind of thing. You have to learn to, you can see me, I talk with my hands, whether I'm on camera or I'm in person. Some people do that. But it is more difficult. But I do think, and I guess the other thing I would say is, if you go online to LinkedIn and search for fully remote or virtual jobs, you will find a number of legal jobs that are fully remote. I think it's very difficult to do that if you are most of those are corporate, in-house corporate stuff. I think it's far more difficult to do if you're trying to counsel clients. But also those of us with military experience know that there were times when when I was a defense attorney, I was advising a client who I couldn't get to, right? And so you had to do that virtually. So yeah, I think they're there. I just think you have to look for them. So that's that's my thoughts on it.
I might add just really, really quick. I haven't been in a courtroom for about a year and a half. And prior to that, for 40 some years, I was in a courtroom, at least 4 out of 5 days. And so it's just a different world. I think at some point the courts are going to be coming back. It'd be interesting to see if the major, like the big law firms, will continue to do what they did pre-COVID, because I think they're finding that as opposed to needing 4 or 5 floors on a major building in downtown Phoenix, we can let these attorneys work from their home and reduce our overhead dramatically. And so I think that's just an interesting aspect. I would also add I think President Robbins has focused over the years on what he references as the 4th Industrial Revolution, in artificial intelligence and robotics, intellectual technology. And so I think, all these issues as we go forward are going to be just areas that people are going to find employment in. I did see that Gina referenced like what kind of a personality do you need or qualities to go into law. And obviously if you're going to be a trial attorney, that's one aspect. If you're going to be doing, there are some attorneys that love to write and do appeals, and others that all they want to do is maybe help legal aid. So there's law is fascinating because you can have any type of background and personality that you want, and there's something that can help you with that. But in professional organizations, you would find if you became an attorney, I mean, there are so many professional organizations that help, so that you would just, again, I think the type of area you got into would kind of dictate what your professional organizations would be. But there are so many of those that you could really have your choice in your pick.
Right. And I mean, just kind of merging those two conversations together, right? I mean, the qualities, you need to be flexible. And as these roles are in any industry is evolving and changing, the flexibility of being able to learn new skills and apply old ones, and, it's going to become more and more valuable.
My question is, what is your spark that made you want to do law, and how did you find the area of law that you want to specialize in?
So the spark that caused me to go to law school, when I was growing up, there was somebody who was like a father to me that I looked up to, and he was an attorney. He actually did divorce law, not kind of nowhere near what I do, but I looked up to him, and he died of cancer, unfortunately. But and part of the reason why I went to ASU for law school was because there's a small book scholarship in his name there. And I was able to get that scholarship my 1L year. It meant a lot to me. I'm sure it means a lot to anybody who gets it, but a little extra meaning for me. So that was the big part of the reason why I wanted to be an attorney, since I was kind of a kid, with my sidestep in finance. And then I went into what I'm currently doing. So there's two routes you can go sort of in being an attorney. You can either go the transactional route, which is being like a business attorney representing companies primarily in transactions, so mergers, acquisitions, acquisitions of commercial real estate, sales, leases, those types of transactions. It's a lot of paperwork, kind of a lawyer's paradise in that regard. Or you can go the litigation route, which is what you traditionally think of when you think of a lawyer, filing motions, arguing in court, being before a judge, writing briefs and responses to other briefs and motions. My personality is I do better when people sort of agree on things, and everybody's in a good mood and kind of working together to get something done, as opposed to where it's two opposing sides with opposing goals in a case. So I went the transactional route, and with my finance background, transactional law was the right fit, and then commercial real estate transactions was the right fit, kind of because I fell into it. My buddy who I worked in finance with at PayPal worked at a big REIT in Phoenix. He got me the internship, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm gonna keep doing this, and so I did, and that's how I'm here today. Networking is very important, and I'll tell you, U of A, they taught me probably 80-90% of my networking skill. Pete Corrigan, who I'm sure some of y'all have met. Yeah, I love Pete. He's a great guy. I used to go into his office every week, and we would call finance professionals, investment bankers all throughout the country, whoever we could kind of dig up or find, and try to set up meetings with them and coffee meetings, and just to sort of move me along my way in my career path. And Pete taught me how to present myself and how to network with other people. I feel like a lot of times when you're in college and sort of a particularly younger student, it can be kind of scary to talk to people you don't know, and you're not really sure how to go about it. But I think an important mindset to have is not, okay, what am I, I feel guilty because I'm just trying to get something out of this person. They have a job, I want that job too. It's better to think of it differently. And once you set the foundation for your mindset, it makes it very easy to network. Certainly one of my best skills now. You want to more be thinking of, okay, this person has done something that I think is really cool, and I admire them, and I'd love to hear about how they got where they are. And maybe if they have some words of wisdom for me, then it can help me in my own career, because everybody's career is different. There are some people who are similar, but you never know where it's going to take you and who you're going to meet along the way. And I think having an open mind and just being good to everybody you meet is a great way to go.
I was just going to add, for Alice's standpoint, on networking, if you, on any of the ones that are participating today, if you ever go into private practice, that's an economic circumstance. You have a business that you have to run. You have to pay your other attorneys, and you have to pay your staff, and you have a landlord to pay, and malpractice insurance for everybody. So the economics are very, very big, and obviously the whole key there is you have to bring clients in the door. And my practice always had been, with the kind of work I do, 95% of it is referrals from other attorneys that represented companies that needed protection, but they don't do that kind of work. So I always would follow up with a written response back, thanking somebody for their referral. If you get a referral from somebody, you want to, if at all possible, repay that person by referring back to that attorney with areas that maybe you don't practice on. You always thank a client at the end of the representation for the opportunity to have represented that client. But there's so many ways that you learn over the years on networking that it's important. And you know, the area you get into law, I think, again, Perry hit it right on the head. Sometimes you just back into things. The firm I went with within 30 days, they needed somebody to represent an auto dealership in a Chapter 11 case, and nobody did it. And somebody remembered I took a bankruptcy course in law school, and all of a sudden it's like, well, you know, go at it. And I had no clue, and you just kind of take step by step, and all of a sudden, wow, I was able to do that. And then here comes some more cases, and that was what I did for the next 45 years. So it just, you know, sometimes you like Perry said, again, you just back into things, and you're fortunate when that happens.
So let's circle back to maybe some of the questions that were posed in the beginning. I think Haley had a great question, and it kind of goes along with Gina as well, and in the job search process, right? So what does that look like for careers in law? Perry, I know you mentioned having some internship experience, and we've talked about networking, but any other thoughts in that specifically for that job search time?
I take this since I'm thinking I probably have done it the most recently out of law school. So as back in some of y'all's time, I'm sure they have what's called OCI, on-campus interviews. The big firms and government type legal employers will attend those, and also they will have kind of seminars or meetings after school hours with students to discuss a career with, you know, their agency or with the county attorney's office, etc. I would say a trend in the legal industry has been less large firms recruiting, recruiting a lower amount of incoming associate classes. So these are just the big firms and medium-sized firms in town. They will hire a handful of students now, and typically you need to be in the top at least third of your class ranking. There's been a lot of pressure on grades in law school, particularly in your first semester of law school, which kind of determines whether you'll get an internship after your first year of law school or your second year of law school. And then typically if you are a top student and can get in what's called a summer clerkship, you're a summer associate, typically you will get an offer so long as you do a good job and the firm likes you and it's a good fit. Now, that does not mean that hope is lost for everybody else, because there are many career paths to go into, and going to a big law firm is not necessarily the best either, and I can speak from experience. It's great. However, it's very demanding, and your personal life will certainly take a hit, whether you like it or not. But I would say internships are another great way to set yourself up for success after law school, as I did. There are many corporations in Phoenix who will offer in-house positions. And oftentimes those in-house positions, you don't have to be in the top third or top 25% of your class, just as long as you're a good student and involved and you enjoy your job and are a good person, you can very well get hired after law school. And simply another way, I mean, you can go on job boards out there that may not be associated with your law school. Find legal jobs that way. Typically, that would be with a smaller type firm or corporation, or you just go out and network. I will say the legal field is very different from businesses. To find jobs at businesses, you kind of go online and there's job postings everywhere, wherever you want to go. And oftentimes there's recruiting departments and HR departments at companies who are trying to bring people into work. Law firms are a little bit different. The big firms certainly do have a robust HR, but smaller firms, often the solo practitioner or smaller group of attorneys are running the entire show. You know, maybe they'll probably have an office manager or somebody who helps with all the HR stuff and does help with hiring. But ultimately, if these attorneys meet somebody that they like, whether they're a student or a new attorney, and they see potential in that person, and that person has the drive and desire to work with that attorney, often you can get a job with that attorney. You know, every firm's a little bit different, and it kind of depends what their financial situation is, what kind of the goal of that firm is. You know, you get some firms who maybe it's just a couple guys and they're doing well on their own, and they think, you know, what do we need to bring somebody else in for? We got a great thing going here, and we're going to retire in a couple years. You know, or sometimes you'll have the same type of firm with a different perspective, thinking, you know, I'm going to be retiring soon, and I have this great book of business. It would be really cool if I could find an awesome student or a young attorney that I could pass my legacy on to. So, you know, again, networking, I would say, particularly in the legal field, is very important, because you have to be a little more creative, I think, when you're getting a legal job sometimes.
I do think it has a lot to do with who you know. I also think that I'm a firm believer in, especially now where everything is done online, and you don't have to pay to get resumes printed. You don't have to mail them. Apply for a job even if you're not fully qualified. And I have seen studies that show that men are far more likely to apply for jobs where they're lacking some qualifications than women are, that we as women tend to cut ourselves out of the picture. I got my job at Raytheon because I had applied for a job with the Office of General Counsel, did not get that, but my resume was on file and it matched the requirements of the job I got. Similarly, I got the job at Fort Huachuca because the staff judge advocate, the head of the legal officer, had been one of my instructors when I went to the Army JAG school. So we knew, so networking, you cannot discount the value of that. The other thing I think is important for those of you who are maybe not in law school is to look at those opportunities for kind of volunteer work. And one of the ones I know that is in the Sierra Vista area that's throughout the state is what they call, help me with the acronym if I get it wrong, folks, CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates. Especially, I think, Alice, you asked that question. If you're a social worker, you may be familiar with this. This is where you act on behalf of children, or the State Bar of Arizona every year with a lot of other organizations does what they call a veteran stand down in Phoenix. That I don't think that we did it this last year because of COVID, but it's huge. So look for those opportunities as well, just because you may find out that there are, CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, but there are any number of those. You don't have to have legal training. They train you, you do those kinds of things. The other thing I think is important is that you at least for me, again, with my journalism background, you have to make sure that you have a good grasp of your communication skills. So look for those opportunities again, whether it's writing, or I know some folks who are, go to Toastmasters or whatever it may be, improve your communication skills. But, and honestly, those are the kind of things that even if you don't go into law, volunteer work, communications, networking will serve you well no matter what career field you go into.
Say that, I knew I was going into the military because I was on a military program. And so I didn't have to seek a job and was very grateful not to have to. But I second with both what Perry and Susan says, and that is being active in bar activities, whether it's a local bar association, whether it's other areas where you can network. And I think Perry really hit the nail on the head. That's very important. If you have a passion about something, environmental, chemistry, music, whatever it might be, get involved in those organizations that you really love to be doing something in, because there are people in there that will need a lawyer, whatever your field may be. And so I second the connection aspect.
What is the average day-to-day of kind of your job and what you do? So what does that look like? And then we can kind of mesh that with Gina's question about those personality traits and characteristics that help you be successful in those day-to-day responsibilities and activities. So
it's just always funny when people say to me the general day-to-day, because everything in the law, it's so, I think if you ever ask a lawyer a question, the answer you are almost always going to get is it depends, right? Because it does. It is so dependent on the facts and circumstances. And so every case that walks in the door is a little bit different, or there are the basics that and so, it's hard for me to say what a day is like, other than I would say most attorneys, if you're not purely an appellate attorney who writes briefs and things like that, you're probably going to spend most of your day talking to people. You have to be able to communicate, and you have to enjoy communicating, whether it's in writing or whether it's in person. Somebody, I think maybe it was Ted, I don't remember who, or Dawn, spoke about being a defense attorney. Like I said, I was a defense attorney for 2.5 years, and that was probably about 6 to 8 months too long, because it requires, being a trial lawyer requires an incredible emotional investment. And I reached the point where I had kind of burned out, right? I couldn't give my clients the emotional support that they needed. So you really do need to think about that. Do you want to be involved in people's problems all day, every day? Or do you want to pick something that's a little more proactive, that's helping people avoid their problems? And I can't, that's just a question each of us has to answer. One of the things, and I'm sure Ted would echo this, one of the things I loved about the military was it exposed me to a whole bunch of different types of law. And I don't know that you will get that anyplace else, like you do in the military. Within my first 4 years as a JAG, I had done 3 different things. I've been prosecution, defense, and what we called civil law. So I would also encourage you to do what you can to explore those areas as much as possible.
Ted, I'm interested from your perspective, being on the bench and acting as a judge, how did that contrast kind of the day-to-day of, what Susan was talking about?
Well, I think Susan's exactly right. There's a lot of communications. When you're on the bench, it's very structured. When you're in court, and there's a lot of reading and research and reading briefs and briefs and briefs, and you learn how important it is to omit needless words. And I will say something that I had kind of thinking about saying at the end. You got to know the rules. And what I would say to lawyers is read the rules of practice every year. In January of every year with their changes, because there are changes. And that's one thing that I wanted to say to people that were in the law practice, if they are on this group and were alums of this program. Read the rules. And then what was important to me on the bench was to have the attorneys identify the issue or identify the standard that I had to apply in making a decision. That was the most key thing that had to be in a brief, the standard that I had to apply, and then the arguments and positions that they had to relate to prevail on their particular position. And so being on the bench is far different. I think you are really focused on what attorneys give you and what you try and decide is the right and fair and legal proper answer. A little bit different than the practice. And I absolutely agree with Susan. I had so many experiences in the military in the first few years. And another thing that I want to say about that, and that is, if you think law school is a big deal, you're constantly being educated in the military. I think in the military, and I think in the legal profession, we have the CLE stuff, but we had really good preliminary instruction going into trying cases before we actually tried them at the Army JAG school. And then every year we go back and get specialty courses if we were being put into a new area. Contracts was certainly one of them, international law, another one, admin law, all those things. So huge variety of things. And I think lawyers that are not in the military and have that kind of background, your firm has to do that. And it's important that you take advantage of those education and continue your education.
Final thoughts of what advice would you have, given some of the questions that we were having, a quick one-pointer advice from each of you for our students and alumni in the audience today. So Perry, would you like to start?
Yes. If you're interested in a career in law, get the best GPA that you can and get the best LSAT score that you can. I hate to say it, but when law schools are looking at your application, those are the two biggest factors that they care about. And we'll look at everything else, the soft skills, club leader, being a good member of the community, giving back, service project. Everybody's going to have that on their application because these are the best of the best. Plus, a few extra points on your LSAT and or GPA could mean the difference between a scholarship or not a scholarship in law school. And law school is very expensive, particularly today. In order to achieve that high LSAT score, I would highly recommend you take an LSAT prep course. I took one. It increased my score by at least 10 points, which is huge. It's an investment. It's a few $1,000s, and you have to put some time into it, either late nights or summertime or what have you. But it is well worth it. Do it and work hard in school.
I had four, and I'll just touch base immediately and quickly on it. But in the law, you will win cases and you will lose cases, and you have to learn to do either one with dignity. You win properly, you lose properly. In the law, you prepare. You just have to know everything when you take on a case. Keep your reputation and your ethics. If you ever lose your reputation, I don't know how you ever get it back, because you're going to be before the same judges and the same attorneys. And so, that's just the utmost, I think. And then the final thing is, with a profession like the law, you have to balance your family and your health. Obviously, family is so important, and then you have to take care of yourself, exercise properly. But those would be the things that I would wrap up on.
I would just say also, I agree with everything that everybody else has said. You have to balance things, and you have to realize you will not always be the best. Okay, when you go to law school, I went to law school and I had a 3.8 something GPA at the U of A, and I did really well on my LSATs. I went to law school with a woman who had a perfect memory and ended up clerking, had a better than a 4.0 GPA and ended up clerking for a Supreme Court justice. And I realized, okay, I'm not always going to be the best. I don't have to be the best. You have to be good enough and recognize where that line is. Okay. And also recognize that you can't do it all. I took my federal income tax final when I was 37 weeks pregnant with my third son. And I've always hated federal income tax since then, but you have to balance that. You do have to decide what you want out of your legal career. I've never wanted to work for a private firm. Some people, that's all they want to do. You have to decide, because everyone has its pros and cons, and you are always going to give something up. So just understand that and realize that, again, the beauty of the law is if you're a good lawyer, you can often learn another area of the law. So don't feel stuck. So keep your options open to the maximum extent you can.
Ted, go ahead, finish this off.
I'd broken down my final comments into people who were beginning to go to law school, people who were in law school, in the law practice. And I think a number of things that I would have said, particularly about being in law school in the law practice, have been covered. So I'm not going to repeat those, but I do want to say something, because I think most of the people in the audience are people who are interested in going to law school. And I've often been asked, what would you advise a person that's going to law school to take to get into law school? And well, I certainly agree with Perry doing well on all your exams and what have you. I think English literature is one of the most important things that a person could take as a preparatory course to do well in law school and in a law practice. I think you also have to have something that is your natural interest, because that can be a carryover and the thing that will help you not in your practice. If you like chemistry and you're environmental, do that. If you like farming and you want to do that, that's it. If you're a musician, any of those other things complement, but English is incredible. I will say, and I think Perry may be an example of this, the people that did the best in my class were people who had accounting and then went to law. They are financially better off than anybody else that I know in my class. And I think that I just added something during our program right now, so I am even learning from everybody. I would take a business course while I was in college, because you don't get business courses in law school. Now, you may take contracts and things like that, but you don't know how to run a business. And I think that that is a really important thing for people to do. I'll say two other things, and that is, I think you should develop an interest outside the law, whether it's art, music, gardening, whatever it be, theory, carryover sports, really important for you to have. I'm understanding that after I've retired, and I've got to do things that aren't necessarily in the thing. I was a workaholic. I loved what I did. The law is something that I think we all love, but you need to have some carryover things. And finally, find a mentor. Find a mentor. I didn't do that. I didn't feel that I did that, but I think that I would have enhanced my appreciation of the law and the practice and what have you, had I found somebody who was senior who would really sort of take me under their wing. And someone might do that automatically with you, but I think it's important that if that doesn't happen, you find somebody that will help you along.